first line of the Our Father in the Aramaic, the Ash, that still point from which love as power pours out and radiates like a stone in a pond, which is also the image in the last line of the Our Father. But that Shemaiah, that is from the original and still the most important prayer of the Jewish faith, which is the Shema, which is listen, pay attention. And it goes on, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Echenu, Adonai Echad, Vehavta Adonai. And so it's saying, hear Israel, the Lord your God, the Lord is one. And you shall love the Lord God with all your heart, Bechol, no, that's the last line, Ufhol, Navshecha, Ufhol, Meodecha. I think I got it right. But with all your heart and soul and mind, you love the Lord God. That's the thing. So that's underneath there. It's present there. This is Jesus talking about these various things about how God works. But underneath it all, remember the Lord your God, the Lord is one, as a fundamental basis for it. I find that quite wonderful. The way the language works and the way they had the understandings, that we have dropped off since then. Okay. All right, we don't have to say too much about that. We see the rocky planets there with Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, and then further out, Uranus and Neptune, and then we've got the Plutoids, Pluto, Eris, Makemake and Haumea, and then you've got the dwarf planet Ceres in the closer. But they're all in the one plane again, travelling at different speeds and different shapes. You can see that there. And there's an asteroid belt, which is after Mars and before Jupiter. It's an amazing thing, but that's clumps of dust that were just not big enough to be drawn into the sun. But they had all the potential for life. Okay, so we see our moon, which is rocky again, and was probably pulled out of the earth, spun off at some stage early. It seems to have much the same minerals and stuff. It's not all that much. Then from the moon, there we are. Can you see what you're looking at there? What do you think you're seeing?
Which continent is Africa?
Not all that easy to discern, is it?
Oh, it's the North Pole, we're looking down, and Russia's on the right. And that's the Dead Sea.
Russia.
I pushed it off, yeah. I think it was the Mediterranean in the middle there. So it had Africa, Asia, yeah. So I wanted to put this one up too. We've all know what that place is. But, our place in the scheme of things, New Zealand and New Guinea and Indonesia and Borneo and others, and Africa over there and America way over here, around the bend. Are they around the bend? No, we've even got Tasmania and the Antarctic and the Arctic. So we put ourselves in there, but you see that we are pretty isolated. When you look at Europe and Asia and Africa in the other one. Then I took this photo on a drive across the Dandenong Ranges from Amberley Retreat Centre to Healesville. I was going to visit the park there, the sanctuary, and I had the window open, and the aroma of these mountain ash. I just had to stop. And so there was the sound of this little babbling brook down here. There was the aroma of the trees. There was just a magnificence of these great tall trees. Stillness. And I thought, yeah, the big picture and the little picture. This is what we have. This, and I thought of Gerard Manley Hopkins in his poem. The world is charged with the grandeur of God. But it's a different kind of grandeur, isn't it? It's grand, but it's not showy. It's not separate. Everything in there belongs. This is unspoiled ecosystem operating. And everything in the universe proclaims the good news. Another ancient statement. Okay. There's another unspoiled ecosystem. Our coral reefs. Until humans get to it. Enough said.
So much of it now, it's scary.
So the life lessons are in the environments. It's out there. We need to see. Jesus proclaimed, used Isaiah to say that I've come for the poor, I've come for the oppressed. But his central thing that he put in Luke 4, I've come to restore sight to the blind. And that's us, human beings. Blind as bats, but we don't have the radar. So these lessons, a good question, I think. Now, that was in Iowa, where I was a bit further south. I was more southeast. This is northwest in Iowa. Now, that had the richest topsoil in the world, 300 feet deep. There is now 0.1 of 1% left. Because it was so rich, they cut down all the trees, everyone, and planted wheat and soy. And you drive across the flat plains of Iowa into Nebraska, into Dakota, and you've got a lot of wheat and you've got a lot of soy. But severely disrupted by that need to make money. We can take it all. The lack of balance. That's why I've titled my book, A Balanced Life. Living a balanced life. Heavy rains in northwest Iowa washed away the soil, leaving this scarred tableau. It's sheet and rill erosion. When you don't have the vegetation to hold the soil together. So it was all blown by the winds coming across, picked up and blown into the Atlantic Ocean. It took millions of years, billions of years, 4 billion years to develop that. So you're not going to get it back. We need to look ahead. There's another unspoiled one from the States. I first talked about this in the States at my retreat centre. The Everglades, they have tried to drain it. Fortunately, they didn't get all that far. They have tried to drain it. And yes, there's a lot of insects, there's alligators, there's a lot of marsh, there's all that stuff. But it's an ecosystem. It's again, a nursery for life, of all kinds of life. So many animals find sanctuary there when they're young. They can hide in amongst the reeds and everything. It's like mangrove swamps. You don't really want to go walking through a mangrove swamp unless you want stinky mud all over you and get bitten to death by insects and whatever else. But they are such an important part of the environment, and yet people who want to put resorts up along things just bulldoze them out. They don't understand. They don't look. Their eyes are shut. And Wendell Berry, who is marvellously beautiful man with his wife, there are no unsacred places. There are only sacred places and desecrated places. So I've talked a little bit about modes of consciousness, but that's a whole different, spiral dynamics is a whole morning's talk. That which misses the cosmic dimension of Christ and the sacred dimension of the universe. And we need a deep transformation of our spirituality, our consciousness, and our civilization. So when you've got a pope who will do that, who will kiss the feet of black people, of women, of prisoners, he's trying to say, change your heart, repent. There is good news. Pay attention to it. What a contrast, huh? A deep transformation of our spirituality, our consciousness, and our civilization. Now, this is a picture off the coast of California, the Channel Islands they're called, and the waters off there are teeming with life. You've probably seen film of the sea otters and all of those, that's around here. Well, they were teeming with life. Now the trawlers have lifted so many fish that the pelicans on these islands now, they see them taking off and flying low across the ocean out to the far islands because there's no fishing close. But what they're doing is landing on those islands because the gulls there and the various seabirds, instead of leaving one to guard the nest, they both have to fly out huge distances to get enough fish to feed the young. So what the pelicans do is scoop up the young and eat them. And that is a new habit in the last 30 years. So the ramifications of what we do go way, way, way beyond what we do. And the Native American people, several of the tribes had this. When they were making a decision on how they should live, where they should live, how they should treat their environment, they said, what effect will this have out to 7 generations? And we call them savages. Will our children and grandchildren to 7 generations dwell in a vibrant living world? And we look at what's happening with climate change and everything now, and wars and forcing people to leave their countries and all of that kind of stuff. And the answer is no, not with that. Can we live and learn in the midst of divine glory? Glory, teshbukta, tranquility, love bursting out. So the last line of the Our Father, which is not in the Gospels, but in the Persian scriptures, the Peshitta, Metal Dalaki Mokuta Wahela Watashbukta. Hela is power, but it's power which is a bursting out of love, unstoppable, spreading, unstoppable, and bringing glory, which is tranquility and harmony. Wonderful word that. Each note separate, but vibrating as one. And peace. Last line of Jesus' prayer. That's divine glory. Power with leading to all of those things. And we're called to it. So I thought I'd put the whole of that poem in, of Gerard Manley Hopkins, a Jesuit priest, moved to Ireland, Trinity College, bewailed the fact that he had to correct all these English papers. He said, I'm correcting the soul of the Irish nation. I basically can't stand it. He was English. The world is charged with the grandeur of God. It will flame out like shining from shook foil or crushed. Why do men then now not wreck his rod? Generations have trod, and all is seared with trade, bleared, smeared with toil, and wears man's smudge and shares man's smell. The soil is bare now, nor can foot feel being shod. And for all this, nature is never spent. There lives the dearest fresh and steep down things, and though the last lights of the black west went, oh morning at the brown brink eastward springs, because the Holy Ghost over the bent world broods with warm breast and with, bright wings. God will not be beaten. We can't give up hope. But it has to be a mystical hope, a hope that is like joy deep down and which keeps us energized and moving to do what we can. But we can't sit like that proverbial sausage on the plate of French fries. Love is in love till you give it away. And there's the bod himself. His poetry wasn't recognized either. It took his friend Robert Bridges another 40 years to get his poetry published, 1880s until 1920s. Okay, what have we got next? This is the orange way of thinking, but it also goes down beyond that. This is a level of consciousness which is still in the first tier, a level before green. It's the entrepreneur consciousness. If I can do it, I'll do it. If I can make money, that's even better. So that change of heart, change of mind, change our lives, so that we can understand that there's the contrary assumption, and that is that what is good for the world will be good for us. It's a complete turnaround, isn't it, from the way we think. And again, when we look at the way the universe was organised and then the way we organise things, we say, well, yeah, we're completely different. We need to come back to what was given to us. Come on. Effort. To know the world. But you always have the deniers. The Irish have a lovely word for that, the begrudgers. He's a begrudger. They tend to begrudge the begrudgers, mind you. So that's Wendell Berry again. I said he's a very, very perceptive fellow. So I've talked about that, so I'll just put it up there so you can have a little recap. Hydrogen, helium. Zap, there's a giraffe. Oh. I wonder if when the first butterfly turned up and God saw this butterfly flutter by and thought, wow, I made that, potentially. Yep. We needed the carbon. That's we are carbon units, mainly. So, and there's that Crab Nebula again. Remember, the nebula collapses down inside itself after it's run out of fuel and pushes all of that loaded dust out into where it can be formed again. So a star releasing itself into the universe. And again, so much metaphor is involved in the spiritual life. Can we release ourselves into the universe? Or do we hold ourselves in tight? These little fellas, loads of trouble, those boys. But every carbon molecule in the body of every child comes from a exploding star. Because there's been no creation since. Every molecule in your body comes from an exploding star. You are very, very old. Much recycled, but very old. And again, you could say that, well, I've come from all of that down through all these ages. And I am here. And I am an individual, and there's no other like me, and there will be no other like me. Is that the love of God or what? Is that care or what? Worth thinking about. You are cosmic. Remember, human, that you are dust, cosmic, and unto dust you shall return, released. There is no other source for carbon, phosphorus, nitrogen molecules but a star and its terrible, beautiful destruction. Does that say something about our own death? What are we releasing into? Is that what we're aiming for? Come to the fullness of what is possible in this life so that we can explode into the next. That's the country from which those boys came. So that's the question, what are we here for? How would it grow into fullness of life? Jesus answered those questions if we pay attention. So, one of the good things about this time is that everything in the spiritual landscape is becoming permeable and porous once more, even though there are strong forces throughout the world to stop that. Whatever we call evil, Shaitan does not like this. Despite all our human engineering and the anthropomorphic checks and balances we reinvent time and time again, God's Spirit blows fresh breezes across the barren deserts of sacred traditions and time-honoured institutions. If there is no life there, get out, because it will be sucking away your life. If there's no way to deal with your pain, you need to find somewhere where you can, because if you don't deal with it, you will inevitably pass it on to others. The churches need to provide these sorts of places, otherwise they're useless. Jesus himself said, well, the salt's got no savour. Pitch it. If they're just clanging bells and cymbals, St. Paul said, don't be that. It's got to be a lot more than that. It's got to be real. New day is dawning over the spiritual landscape, and new possibilities for spiritual pilgrimage open up on all sides. Demo de Merkel. Okay. Another poem, which I hope, poetry uses less coefficient of friction than another language. It can say more with less, and I use it a lot because, again, it is metaphoric, as Jesus used metaphors and similes. And you can't talk about God and saying, I know directly. We've looked at that in the first part of this talk today. So I like to just have the poems there and recommend that you read them. I've got a whole list of things which I use a lot. If you would like that, I can make a list and send it. So this one's Mary Oliver, who I think is a wonderful poet. 5 a.m. Up early. I'd seen their hoofprints in the deep needles. I knew they ended the long night under the pines, walking like two mutant, beautiful women towards the deeper woods. So I got up in the dark and went there. They came slowly down the hill and looked at me sitting under the blue trees. Shyly they stepped closer and stared from under their thick lashes and even nibbled some damp tassels of weeds. This is not a poem about a dream, though it could be. This is a poem about the world that is ours, or could be. Finally, one of them, I swear it, would have come to my arms, but the other stamped sharp hoof in the pine needles like the tap of sanity, and they went off together through the trees. When I woke, I was alone. I was thinking, so this is how you swim inward. So this is how you flow outward. So this is how you pray. absolutely immersed in what God has given us, aware and alert, open, receiving. Maybe that is how we can pray. Do you like that poem? I do. D. Hock, favourite fellow of mine, he founded Visa Card. And then when it was all up and going, he just abandoned it in order to go and get a few acres in his farm. And he farmed and he taught. And because he taught, Visa only worked because he did things differently. He was holonic. He trusted all of his people. So when it came to the question of how to send out Visa cards to 187 nations with all the different banks in those countries, imagine the number in America, 1,000 different banks, different systems, different currencies, different communications, different levels of technology. When you think of it, it's impossible. They did it in a few days because he said, who has that skill? So it might have been a young girl in the department, what do you call the department where letters come in and out, the postal or the, communications. And she would be brought up to run the stuffing of envelopes and things because she knew how to do it. And so you'd have a vice president sitting there, and the story was actually the vice president spilled them all over the floor, and then she's running across saying, oh, don't worry about it, so we'll just fix it up. And he's all apologetic, rather than being the boss. She was the boss for that period of time. And then they did that with all sorts of other people who just got it done. And that was his theory with it. He came up to a lot of opposition from various banks who said, no, you've got to be hierarchic, you've got to be in charge, you've got to have the president does everything sort of thing. Think about our parish priests who can come into a parish and say, right, we're not doing that anymore. And I'm wondering when the parishioners are going to get up and say, we are going to do that anymore. You shut up and do as you're told. You've got a role here, but you're not the boss. Parish council's the boss. And that would be a good thing to happen, I think. Because they do it all the time, and the people are bitterly sad about a lot of this. They lose so much that they've had, but nobody will stand up and say, no, you can't. So he said that we live in an era of massive institutional failure. And he saw that it was beyond the power of reason to design an organisation capable of coordinating a financial global network, although nature regularly achieves that. Why can't a human organisation work like a rainforest, based on biological concepts and methods? So he went there and did that. And as I said, his Visa card was immensely successful. It's changed a bit now because he left, and of course people who came after did not have his vision. So D abandoned the old perspective and mechanistic model of reality and embraced the principles of living systems as a basis for organising. It can be done. Gregory Bateson, who works on this field, the source of all our problems today comes from the gap between how we think and how nature works. We need to be transrational. So, C.S. Lewis, when Tolkien brought him to Christianity, wouldn't come as far as Catholicism, he went as far as Anglicanism because he was Northern Ireland. But he had perception. God is not tame, he's wild, but not savage. It's wild in the sense the way nature works, the way God set out this universe to work. And so this taming is where we take away identity for uniformity. So we can be one but not uniform. And That's what tame does. Puts us all in a cage. Feed us all at the same time every day. Make us do tricks when on call.
Eric, if your God is tamed, it's an idol.
Yep. Yep. So I've talked about how this universe is organised, and here's one of the examples, and this is the Koch snowflake, but it's fractals. So what you see is that triangle, and then it's a triangle on each side, then a triangle on each side, then a triangle on each side of that, then another one, and then another one. Every snowflake is different, like fingerprints, none are the same, but they're all built out of fractals. That's the universe for you. Uniformity? No, but it uses that same shape to make all sorts of individual shapes. We need to see this. Now that snowflake is fractals. And you can't see it until you examine it closely, but it is made entirely out of fractal shapes. The same shape repeated, 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 repeated. But beauty comes from it. A fractal landscape. This landscape does not exist in nature. It was built entirely by a computer out of fractal shapes. So he said that members from the hard sciences like math and physics to the softer disciplines, as they are called, of psychology and sociology, come to chaos. The Lord, the first line of Genesis, there was chaos, and the Lord and the Spirit hovered over the waters. In the gospel, in the Old Testament, and also in the Gospels, the waters are a sign of chaos. So when Jesus walks on the water and it calms, this is saying something that Jesus is godlike. It's starting to become apparent. His disciples didn't see it. So, current ideas of inquiry which utilize ideas from chaos are planetary climate prediction, neural network models, data compression, turbulence, and economics, to name a few. The common thread throughout these topics is a tendency to be complex. As an example, think of the complexity of interactions between something as seemingly simple as water flowing through a faucet into your kitchen sink. A simple flow, described by ordinary physics. If you gradually increase the amount of water coming out of the faucet, you will notice that the state of the water changes from orderly continuous stream into a gushing and splashing flow. As this happens, the ability of physics to say what is happening within the flow decreases dramatically. This is where the model of chaos steps in. Chaos theory attempts to find order within a seemingly unordered universe. But it's there. The order is there. There's a strange attractor. As you can see, we machines, if you can imagine one of those old tractors, you know, traction engine, and the big wheels. Big wheels keep on turning. Proud mother keeps on burning. Away it goes that's the way we do things. Fractals, the strange attractors don't. This is what you see throughout the universe, the way things are designed. At any point, this will be close together to another point, and then immediately it'll be far away. That's why I love the labyrinth. It mirrors that kind of thing. It is a universal tool. You don't... It's ordered, very ordered. When you look at the diagram, you can see it's extremely ordered, but it doesn't work just like that. It takes you from there to there when you think you're going from there to there. And this can be, it's all contained in that one thing. It never goes outside it. There's your order, but no circle is ever the same. That's the way the universe is ordered. And that's the Rossler attractor. Now this is a whole lot of stuff, physics about strange attractors. which I think we can, at this stage, do away with because it's mathematical language and a bit solid. The system tends to evolve for a wide variety of starting conditions. So it's an evolution, it's a set of numerical values, so it's not completely disordered. There's a set of values. They get close enough to attractive volumes, remain close even if disturbed. Okay, so it has a fractal structure, it's called strange. This is often the case when the dynamics on it are chaotic. So initial conditions and any two close alternative initial points after any number of iterations will lead to points that are far apart, just like our labyrinth. So that's the main thing I want to say to that it is chaotic, that it is a system, it is something that works together, but it is never the same. Is that a metaphor for Jesus or for God? Strange attractor. Different from what we do, but you can't tie him down, but he's authentic and beautiful. Look at the beauty in that design. Isn't it something? And that's right throughout our universe organisation. Incredible beauty. So infinite love is planted within humans and all creation. Everything is attracted to everything. Life is attracted to life. Love is attracted to love. God in you is attracted to God in everyone and everything else. This is what it means for everything to be created in the image of God in Genesis 1. God placed his alluring attraction of life towards life in everything that God created. And I meant to put, well, not only small L life, but a large L life, God's life. Thus we might say the Trinity is the soul of creation. Relationship, love, flowing. It's there in the organisation of the universe. God's put it out there. And I've mentioned that several times. It's important because it's such so complexity. See, that's the chaos is a constantly shifting battle zone between stagnation and anarchy. So, but it's live in between, it's chaotic in between, from nothing to completely out of order. The one place where a complex system can be spontaneous, adaptive and alive. And in that sort of thing, for instance, at the tip of the wings of an aircraft, there was a bad crash a decade or more ago now of an airliner which took off too soon after another one and got caught in the chaos and flipped and straight into the ground because it was hardly up. They didn't realise this, that these things are powerful and that they're real and that we need to learn from them. It goes on, because that goes on inside of human beings too, where the chaos erupts, where some people go stagnated and others go into anarchy, go out and knife people, shoot rifles at them, or close off and become a vegetable. You get a good example out in the book The Go-Between. You ever read that? Go-Between? Marvellous story.
Who wrote that?
The Go-Between. Oh, don't ask me that. Yeah. So that's turbulence in the tip vortex from an airplane wing. Fluid turbulence develops through a strange attractor, a main concept of chaos theory. So we want to have everything ordered and no chaos, but the universe says, oh no, you get order out of it. So I put that landscape in there again. That doesn't exist in nature. It's just a fractal drawing, just to reinforce that.
Sorry, Dave, what does fractal mean?
It's that shape.
Sorry?
That shape, the shapes that are repeated. So you can have a shape. I use the example of a triangle, which is then repeated on the edge of each part of the shape. So the triangle had another triangle put on that and that side, and then those triangles had triangles put on each side of those, and it went out and out and out, but they were all triangles.
But you can do it with squares or oblongs
Yes.
as well. But
Yeah,
it becomes- It's the shape you're building the product out
Yeah.
of. So
Yeah.
if you use oblongs.
And the universe is formed that way. They're the key basis of forming shapes. So we can, when we realise that, we can draw all sorts of universe, or all sorts of landscapes and things in all different ways, but where it's all fractal.
Because also the shape sort of
Yeah.
looks the same at different scales. So if you look at, for example, the blood vessels, and if you go into the smaller vessels under the microscope, you will not be able to tell the difference whether you're looking at the larger vessels or the smaller vessels, because the general shape is pretty much the same. So that's the fractal nature.
It jumps forward.
Shapes on shapes on shapes, yeah.
Yeah, shapes are shapes.
Anyway, that's something you can look up. There's plenty of stuff online about it. The mathematical language in some cases is a bit daunting if you're not a mathematical person, which I am not. So 3 questions that D. Hock asked, which I think are important. Why are organisations everywhere, whether commercial, social or religious, increasingly unable to manage their affairs? Good question. An example was from 2008, one of the big banks, Iceland was one of the worst countries in the global economic crash. And the Kaupthing Bank was the main offender in that system. It went completely bust because of the excesses of their people. Why are individuals throughout the world increasingly in conflict with and alienated, there's that alienation again, that lack of relationship, from the organisations of which they are a part? I use that picture from when I was in Iowa. Next door is Wisconsin, and the teachers strike. Can read this, thank a teacher, walk like an Egyptian. Saying, well, we do ancient history and we do all sorts of things. So they were trying to get equal pay and also a decent wage for what they did. Such a vital part of any society is to have good teaching. You were mentioned at Wircham, Mary, saying, well, in churches, and we can see it in our Catholic Church, we're getting such poor teaching in homilies.
Barry, they're saying now that the sovereign citizens are becoming a major problem. They're the people who don't believe in the
Yeah.
There was an article the other day about just they've reached a stage, there's so many of them, that it is becoming a significant problem in Australia.
And what they're thinking, how can we tame these? Yes, but it's not a solution, I think. But what they're responding to is real, very real. And that's what the people in charge need to be looking at, rather than saying, how can we tame this and put them back in a cage? Why is society and the biosphere increasingly in disarray? Well, that's the thing I looked at before with the reefs. Today we're in the midst of a global epidemic of institutional failure, not just in the sense of collapse, but a more common and pernicious form. As soon as we have something like this to do good, out come the vultures. And the people in charge, they don't know how to control it. Organisations are increasingly unable to achieve the purpose for which they were created. They're continuing to expand as they consume resources, demean the human spirit, and destroy the environment. Yes? Yes. Yes. That's why this stuff, I think, is very, very important to say, well, we need to somehow find a way to get this. So here's a list of some of the things that don't work. Schools that can't teach. I know there was a high school in Melbourne when I was still teaching, so back in the 80s, where students started to come across from Port Adelaide High School, and they came into the school, mainly Greek descent. These ones, they didn't have anything to write with, they didn't have anything to write on. At that high school in Port Adelaide, we learned later that when the teachers used their own money to buy pens and paper, the kids just broke them or tore it up in front of them. So they came into Christian Brothers College, St Kilda, and we had to deal with this. Schools that couldn't teach. Unhealthy healthcare systems, corporations that can't cooperate or compete even. They just try to destroy each other. Universities that are far from universal. We've had this business of Jewish and Muslim people in universities, and welfare systems where nobody fares well. Agriculture that destroys soil and poisons water. Well, we saw that sheet and rill stuff in Iowa. Police that can't apply the law with balance and justice. Just go to Victoria. Unjust judicial systems. Governments that can't govern. Yep. Economies that can't economise. This was one example I had a couple of years ago in England, where the South End area was, people said, well, it's a no-go zone for the police. They don't dare go in there. Rising Housing Commission flats where the gangs ruled, and the police dared not go. And the Assistant Commissioner here looks like a competent fellow, doesn't he? Saying, oh no, we're okay, yes, we're doing this. But the fact is they weren't. Police that can't apply the law, balance. So there's a flaw, and our societies need to wake up. And they need to wake up that the answers are there. They're there in the way the universe is organised. Have you been on Puff and Billy and the Dandenong Ranges? Great fun. Can we deal with it using the same old 17th century mechanistic command and control forms of organisations? Well, DHOC shows us we couldn't. And there's also a big corporation in Spain, the Mondragon Corporation, which was started by a priest. He started in a poor part of the country, up towards the north, a lot of fighting. He started a school for economics and to teach the kids, to give them a chance to get on in life. And then he thought about these corporations and companies and whatever that were not doing well. And so he got 5 of his best students to start the Mondragon. And it's expanded, and the rules for it are very equitable. They put the people first. So instead of saying, oh, we've lost profits here, we're going to fire 4,000 workers, it's 4,000 families without an income, and mortgages and payments and homes and all of that kind of thing. The damage is immense. They said, no, we'll use the profits to keep the people employed. Those kinds of things. Changing the heart, changing the mind. Well, now I think they have 200 companies in their corporation, and they work at a profit. The idea is, yes, we have to make a profit. We've got to pay all our people, but the profits are not first. There is a second bottom line, and it's wonderful, and it's Christian, and it works for the people. They have a living wage, and they can depend on it. So, yes, can we change from those sort of organisations where the boss is in the top of the tower with the views and the huge office and doesn't know what the heck's happening down beneath? It needs to be very practical. When was the last time evolution rang your telephone and asked you for permission? We need to evolve, keep evolving. The universe is the metaphor for that. Change our internal mode of reality. And that's essential for our 21st century spirituality. Change is more about getting rid of than acquiring. An Anglican bishop says that every now and again, he said, people, we need to have a rummage sale in the church. We need to get rid of all the stuff we've accumulated over the last 500 years. So if you look at the history of the church, every 500 years, there has been a big clean out, normally led by the religious, not by the clergy. So religious priests as well as religious brothers and nuns, but they're the ones who have done the work and said, we've accumulated so much rubbish, pitch it. Well, the year 2000 was another pitching time. So what should we be pitching? Yes, so where do I begin? Well, where else? But they're looking for relationship, they're looking for backup, they're looking for a community with enthusiasm. It's a great word, enthusiasm, en theos, in God. The energy of God. That kind of enthusiasm, not rah-rah enthusiasm. Some creators of enormous social change. Jesus of Nazareth, Muhammad, Gandhi, Mother Teresa, Joan of Arc, Martin Luther King. All nobodies. Their ideas, not that unique, often quite traditional. And there's a question. Why were they so compelling? Well, they were alert and they were aware and they saw clearly. Opened the eyes of the blind. They didn't have delusions. They were real and saw the real and were in touch with the real. And our society, again, with our screens, so many of our people now, particularly the young people, live in an unreal world. Hours and hours a day, and they think about it all the time, how they're going to get to the next level in the game, that kind of thing. The relationships are shot because they don't talk to each other. Text.
Their parents are doing exactly the same thing.
Yep.
Sometimes when I'm walking down the street in Sydney, I'm gobsmacked that literally everyone on the device.
And it gets embedded. It gets embedded. And people who live on welfare now, there have been generations who live on welfare and coupons. It just becomes what our family does. And that's a real problem. Schools and churches are not dealing with it. They're starting to now. I mean, this idea of having a ban on kids being on social media under 16 is important, I think. Whether it's being applied well is another matter, but it's you have to draw the line with that and say, no, they've got to live as children. They've got to have a life outside a screen. They've got to learn about relationships, and you can only do that when you're relating, not staring at a screen. So it's a difficult problem. So when you look at Mohandas Gandhi, you don't see a film star, a rock star, but gee, he accomplished a lot. So 4 things, and I think we owe these to Mary Oliver. Oh no, not those. So you need to look at this when you're saying, what can I do? How were things? How are they now? How might they become? How they could become? What needs to be done? What sort of team? This happened with Taizé, because they started, just a few people, right on the border of Vichy France and occupied France, and they were funneling people across the river. But that's just the way it started. So the people in Taizé, they didn't start by preaching, but by living as though it were already true. and said, this is what we want to do. We want to live as a community. We don't want to take any outside help. We want to live on what we do ourselves, what we make and sell and grow, and we provide. So we're not a blot on the landscape. We're not sucking up resources. We are living as economically and as holistically as we can, and ecologically as we can. They just did it. And when I was there, the Dutch priest who came or his brother came and talked to the adults from several countries there, he spoke in English mainly, and then he had a Dutch person there and a French one there, an Italian one there, and an American one there. They speak a different language, and a Russian here and a Pole, and he got them to translate what he was saying to the group that was around them in this area. Weren't a huge number, but there were several countries represented and languages. But every so often he'd speak in that language and say, no, this is what it said, in Dutch, and then in French, and then in Italian, then in German, then in Polish. It was an amazing performance. He looked to be only in his late 20s, early 30s, but he had a command of language, which was really something. And the message was good too. I was in the petit chœur, the little choir, and the basses. That's us over there. The sopranos, the contraltos, the tenors, and the basses. And you had to practice a lot of their music. There was some time there. It was a wonderful retreat. I was there a week. So they had authenticity. They said, I don't have to live the way I'm living now. And once they began living as though that were true, they had an authenticity that was just compelling. And so complexity theory would call it a strange attractor, a legitimacy, an authenticity brings them in. And they have as many as 20,000 kids there at a time, particularly at the big feasts of Easter and Pentecost and Christmas. When I was there, they would have had about 5,000 or 6,000 young people. We adults were not allowed to connect with the young people in the teaching section, but we could meet with them at meal times. They fed us out of buckets. That was all right. It's wholesome food, grown on the property. It was hot. All the days were over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Yeah. Oh, that's the Lorenz attractor. Yeah, we got back to that. Capacity for authenticity is just about in every human being. Those who have sort of been born psychopathic or something like that, probably not, but it is in just about every human being. Be very few. Goethe. I've got this on a stone on my desk. Whatever you can do or dream, you can. Begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. So it has to happen at both levels. That's De Honk in his younger days. So he was working on a chaotic concept with a group in, that was a word he designed himself. So chaos, bringing order out of that, doing it in society, in business, in communities. So when he had a visa going, he left it. I said he went to a farm, he immersed himself in nature, but then he began giving talks on this whole concept in various areas. How might it work for you? How might it work for your organisation? How might it work there? And so he was working on that with a group in Miami, and one woman stopped the meeting to say, wait a minute, I thought we were here to work on changing our organisational structure. This is about changing me. She got it. I'll have to change my consciousness, my spirit, my way of thinking in order to function in this new organisational form. She ran out. Couldn't do it. But that she was right. She went on to say, I'll probably have to withdraw. I don't think that I will be capable of making that kind of a personal change. Because we do have choice.
I think she sounds incredible. She, like, the fact
Oh,
that
yeah.
she just put it there, even if she did do a runner, there was something about the way.
That's that authenticity. She was herself. She realised that she couldn't just yet. I wouldn't mind betting she came to it though, because she is authentic. But the others were sitting there, sort of taking it in, but not really getting it. She got it. Said, "Oh, this is big. This is
Said that
big."
made them think how big it was.
Yeah. It could have well done that. Okay, that's it. You can escape now.
And 35 degrees.
Thank you very much.